What's up, guys, and welcome back to Wake Up Entertainment. So, there is something that Chris Mangena, the forensic investigator, did during his investigations, and it is that he visited each and one of the accused and asked them to remove their shoes and their socks. After that, he then measured their height and also the shoulder length. With that information, he wanted to crack this Senzo Meiwa case.
I'm instructed by Maphisa, Mr. Maphisa, that it is correct that you did visit him on the 6th of July 2020 at Louis Cop prison. He agrees that you did take his height, his shoulder and his elbow, and you asked him to take his shoes and socks. That was on the 6th of July 2020 and you did not find anything.
That's correct, man.
He instructs me that, and I must put it to you, that he was not at the crime scene on the 26th of October 2014. That is the crime scene at house number 13511, Utwanong Street. At the times that it is said the incident occurred.
I cannot comment on that, man.
He further instructs me that he is not a person of interest, or he was not a person of interest, and he has never been a person of interest in this case.
I was not the investigating officer, and he was not a person of interest to me. Probably to the investigating officer, but not to me.
He further instructs me that the fact that you did not find any injuries or scars on his leg support his sentiment. What is your comment?
I cannot comment on that, man.
He has placed this on record not more than once. He instructs me that he knows accused number 1, Mr. Spear.
So, with this information of measuring the height of the person and the shoulder length, what Mangena here was trying to determine was to determine who was the shooter inside the Kumalo house based on the trajectory of the bullet and the shooter's statue. But the unfortunate part for Chris Mangena is that the information that he got from measuring the height and the shoulder length, it did not help him to identify who the shooter was. So when he was being asked by Advocate Nxumalo, Mangena actually conceded and said he did not find anything helpful in cracking this case by measuring the height of the shooter and also the length of the shoulder length. So it was obviously a big disappointment for Mangena himself, but for Maphisa, who was being measured, this came as a huge relief because on that aspect, he is innocent. So after realizing that the information that Mangena actually got, it did not help him to go anywhere. No wonder Maphisa had to actually tell Advocate Nxumalo to present to the court that he is actually innocent because Mangena did all of his investigations on him and actually found nothing. Because what is obvious is that had Mangena truly identified the shooter based on his height and the length of the shoulder, he was obviously going to present that information in court as evidence. But since that information did not match, it's Maphisa's turn now to go for the juggler and actually claim before Judge Ratha that he is actually innocent and say, hey, look at your investigator. He did not find anything while he's investigating me. So looking at Mangena and what he was trying to do, it is actually possible to estimate the shooter's height and stance and actually find out who the shooter was based off of that information. So what Mangena analyzes are the bullet holes and the angle of impact on the surface to determine the path of the bullet. So by tracing this path of the bullet, the investigator can actually estimate where the shooter was standing at, or whether he was actually crouching or at an elevated position. So the good part about this investigation is that if the shooter was standing from a normal standing position, the bullet's angle can actually give a rough estimate of the shooter's height, and the witnesses who were inside the house actually said the shooter was standing. So Mangena should definitely have found the shooter based off of these statistics. So all of this information, what does it mean for accused number 4, Mthokozisi Maphisa? What this means is that this bullet trajectory did not match the height of Maphisa, and it actually may tell us that he was not the shooter. So definitely maybe we can conclude that he was not the shooter because the height did not match Mthokozisi Maphisa's height. So he is not the shooter on this one. So that one is out of the window for us here, but that does not prove his innocence, because he could have been playing other roles, for example, like planning, assisting, or covering up. And on that aspect, he has to prove his innocence before the court. So looking at the evidence, the DNA evidence, it definitely excludes him. He is not like in part when it comes to the DNA evidence. So let's look at another evidence, the phone call records. And it turns out that Maphisa was actually in contact with other guys like Mthokozisi Mncube, Moses Sibia, and Fisohle Ntuli. That's according to the evidence of Gininda. But that is a little bit unsurprising because himself, Maphisa, is actually agreed that he knew Moses Sibia, and they were actually like relatives. So the communication between them, it's unsurprising. So Mthokozisi Maphisa is still pleading his innocence. Now let's move on to the other evidence and see if he is linked or not linked. So surprisingly, from what I've just seen after researching if Mthokozisi Maphisa is linked by forensic findings or not, it turns out he is not linked to this crime scene at the Khumalo house by forensic analysis. And on top of that, Mthokozisi Maphisa is not linked by any eyewitnesses. So the question that you'll have to ask yourself after looking at all of this is that, so why was he arrested in the first place? Well, it turns out that he had these phone calls with Fisohle Ntuli. Fisohle Ntuli himself, he is definitely linked. So he made these calls with this guy. And there is also this allegation that he was at Voslora's hostel. So his presence there and these phone calls with Fisohle Ntuli. So it's like Mthokozisi Maphisa was arrested over this broader perspective by a connection of dots from all of these other guys, not just by looking at the evidence on just him alone, but in a broader perspective. So he is sort of like tied together with these guys, and in trying to prove his innocence, he has a lot of work to do. So tell me what you think in the comment section, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.